coming in. Why don't you take a minute, use the chat box, tell us where you are watching from, and introduce yourself. And we want to welcome you as well. A lot of people that have signed up today, and we're looking forward to visiting with everybody. So welcome. As people are beginning to share where they're from, and I want to say hello to Leanne up in Milton, Freewater, Oregon. I did a council retreat with them several months ago, an incredible city. They're doing such great work there. Good to see you, Leanne. Krissa, we have come to a great place in the life of SGR as we have handed the baton over to this gentleman here to lead us. What are you excited about with AFI from your standpoint, Krissa?
Of course, I'm a huge fan of AFI and also a huge fan of our strategic foresight team. Housen on our team produces some just absolutely incredible reports based on trends and all about the future of the workplace and all kinds of, I'm not going to try to name them because I'll mess it up. But anyway, I think Troy is just a wonderful addition to that team and will do a great job leading them. I've been impressed with Troy as well from the first time we met, which I guess was a while back now. Troy and I worked together on the First Responder Servant Leadership Series in New Braunfels, which has been really successful. So from the get-go, I've been impressed with Troy, and I can't wait to see what he and Housen and the others do together.
For sure. Well, my experience with Troy is just like yours. Just about everything he does with excellence. And we know that the same is going to be true with AFI. Thanks, Jeremy Allen over in Tequesta. I remember that. That was a great time with you guys. And welcome everybody that's a part of this. Troy, we're so glad you're a part of this team. Thanks for taking time to visit with us a little bit about your new role in AFI. And just for everybody to kind of get familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your journey in leadership and innovation and what has driven your interest in that in local government.
Well, thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. If it's morning where you're located, it might be afternoon on the East Coast. But and Krissa, you and Mike and Lisa, you have laid it on heavy for me. I'm going to have to do well today, not let anybody down. So thank you for your kind words, and thank you for all those that have reached out to say congratulations. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But when it comes to innovation and leadership, Mike, I was really started thinking deeply about this when I was about 10 years into my career. I actually began as a police officer before I got into city management and private sector as well. But I was working and I was doing media relations. And there was a new elected official by the name of Rebecca Jackson that was elected to be the county judge executive in Jefferson County. Jefferson County, Kentucky is where the city of Louisville sits. And she came in with this idea. It wasn't a unique idea, but it had failed twice before in referendums. But she saw that the city and county continued to compete against each other. It wasn't good for our citizens in the city or the county. And she decided as a leader, she was going to step up and she was going to ensure that there was a merger that took place. And to make that happen, she had to be innovative. So I saw leadership firsthand. I saw her innovation firsthand. And she allowed me to work on the marketing campaign. She allowed me to go lobby different people. And I learned a great deal. I think really that was a catalyst of my career, really thinking about leadership and innovation. Long story short, the referendum passed, and then I was able to get involved with the merger of the city. And I had my hands in the merger of the police department, which we were told was the largest police merger in the history of the United States at the time. And I can tell you, if you're not a leader and you're not innovative, you're not going to make it through a merger. And so it was like necessity. And I had some good mentors around me and some people I could listen to. And that's really where I began thinking about innovation. And as I grew that knowledge and worked for some great people, worked for some that weren't so great, by the way, I learned from them too, what not to do. But then I found myself in the private sector, working for a hospitality organization, and I was hired 2 months before the pandemic. And then the pandemic helped, and all those tools that I learned as far as leadership and being visible and the empathy that you talk so much about in the servant leadership classes, all that culminated, all that experience, and helped me navigate that company through that pandemic. And we had to be innovative, had to change our methodology of business protocol. So that leadership portion and innovation is something I learned early on. I'm grateful for Rebecca Jackson, Judge Jackson, for giving me that chance. It has really laid a very good foundation for me to learn from that point on.
I love the connection you make between leadership and innovation. You have to be a leader to be able to make that happen. Michael Wilkes, who is the city manager in Olathe and former president of the board for AFI, has talked a lot to us about the fact that the right leadership culture has to precede a successful effort towards innovation, or else you won't be able to do it, because there will be some failures along the way. And so I love that connection you're making. And I think it's a very important one that we always teach and maintain, is that we have to have both. So
yeah, and Michael's been very successful doing that very thing. So and I tell people, find someone to follow their career, even if you don't know them. But the good thing about Michael, he's willing to share information. And I will tell you that there were times where people could be a good leader and work in government and they didn't think about innovation. 2025 is not that time. I mean, it is so difficult to be a leader in government right now. You need to use every tool in your toolbox. And to be successful, you not only have to be a visible servant leader, but you also have to be an innovator, because there's some challenges that have occurred and they're going to continue to occur at a rapid pace over the next 4 to 10 years.
for sure.
What about Troy? So kind of thinking through some of that leadership you bring and innovation experience, how does that influence your vision for AFI, or kind of what is your vision for AFI?
Yeah, when you talk about innovation, I really want to make sure that AFI is in a part to be a leader in innovation and technology, foresight, all those areas. But and I think what's so important about innovation for local government is that there's such a potential for improving public services and community well-being. If we are focused on innovation in our positions in government, we can have a tremendous impact on the citizens that we serve. I think local government is uniquely positioned to drive meaningful approaches, innovative approaches. The reason I say this is I've worked in government, I've worked in nonprofits, the business community, but when you talk about local government, it's the closest to the residents. State, federal, great people working there, but they don't have that interaction. And I think with all the different departments having to be that accountable that quickly, it's just a difficult job, but it's one that is very rewarding when you see the benefit for the citizens. So I think with AFI and working on some of the issues that we're dealing with across this nation, we can find solutions by working together to a myriad of issues that local government will face in the future, because you have this collaborative approach. You have a collaborative approach internally with your government, but you also have it with your network of peers in AFI. And I really want to build upon that foundation that's been laid by some great leaders before me.
So I want to pull back a little bit, Troy, and talk to us a little bit about, from just a personal learning perspective, what's something that you've been learning or relearning, or at least thinking about lately in the realm of leadership and innovation that you might want to share with us? I think that'd be very fascinating to hear what's going on inside of Troy Riggs.
Well, I will tell you, since taking this position, I've been in it now, 15 days. I have learned that I have to take time to continue my reading, to make sure that I'm listening to a lot of different areas. And I typically read a lot of news articles and journals, but also I'm trying to read some of the great classics as well, biblical reading as well. So I like to take time a day to do that. I see that it just refreshes me, gives me new ideas, stimulates any creativity that I may have. I think that's important. But when it comes to this job specific, there's some things I'm working on for the future to give value to our members. But one thing that I really think that I need to learn more about, I think everyone needs to know more about, is AI. I mean, right now we have AI that is coming to us. People are kind of using it. No one has fully integrated it into their government. I don't think it's even possible yet, but it's going to be at some point. I know they're even talking about quantum computing that will take it to a whole new level, and that was supposed to be 15 years. I read an article this morning that said it could be as close as 2 or 3 years. And so AI, with some of the government leaders I've spoken to, there's just a fear of the unknown. They hear these news stories that everybody's going to lose their job, which I don't think is true, but they hear those news stories, and some of them are just a fear of losing out. And I think we just need to know more about AI. We need to know how to involve our workforce in those decision makings. But if we have a thoughtful approach, we can make sure that AI benefits our citizens. And that's really what the bottom line is for us at AI. How can we, are in AFI, how can we use something like AI to be innovative and benefit the citizens that we serve today, tomorrow, 10, 20, 30 years down the road? That's a responsibility of a servant leader. And I like to use this analogy. Some people don't like this analogy, so I apologize if you don't, but I like to use the analogy of a train coming down the tracks. You got an AI train headed down the tracks. And if you're in leadership and government, if you're anywhere in government, you have to make a decision. You either get on that AI train and control it and make sure that it's the benefit to your people and it's not controlling you, that you're the engineer, or you get out of its way. Maybe you think, I just don't want to do this. I'm at a time in my career, I just, want to step down and retire. I want to do something. I don't have to deal with it. That's fine. That's your choice. But don't get in the way, because it's going to run over you, and it can ruin a career if you're not ready for it. So think of it as the big AI train coming down the track. And the thing that I'm finding out, it's moving faster than any of us thought it was going to move. And we're not ready yet, and we need to be ready. And that's what I want to focus some of our attention AFI on.
That's such a good point. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Krista wants to ask some questions about other challenges, but just right there, I want to ask you, if you will, talk to us a little bit about how you see our emphasis on strategic foresight that's led now by House and Lay and has been a big part of AFI since SGR began managing it. How do you see strategic foresight and AI fitting together to address some of these needs in cities?
Well, it's going to have to go. It's like hand in glove. There's going to be some things, innovative things, and some steps we can take initially. In AFI, I think we want to help governments do that. But then you got Housen with his deep background, just really looking at the foresight. What's down the road? How do we plan for that? Today is the day we plan for 5 years down the road. And that's what I love about SGR and your teaching, Mike, about servant leadership, and Krista, your development in that, is that it teaches servant leadership and it teaches the qualities, but servant leaders realize their responsibility is not just for today, but 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road. A servant leader will be able to retire in 10 years, see his or her mark on that city. And I think we're uniquely positioned with the innovation part, and then with Housen and the futuristic part, to really put those together that can benefit cities and give them actionable items, not just information. We're all flooded with information. We want to give you good, concise information and detailed information as well if you want to dive into it, but also some steps forward on how to handle things like AI. But it could be it could be any topic that we discuss, but AI is certainly something at the forefront.
For sure. Thanks.
Troy, I wanted to ask also, I love that, by the way, but I wanted to ask also about some of the other, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's a huge challenge and opportunity for local governments in regard to AI. But what are some of the other challenges that you think local governments are faced with right now in regard to?
I'll tell you, I say all the time to leaders when they ask me the best piece of advice, I always say, listen, right? Listen to those that you serve. Listen to those that are working for you. Listen to the community. And so I've been listening to AFI members, not just these last 15 days, but even beforehand, about some of the issues they're facing. I've actually had a chance to visit some of them in their cities. And, AI, obviously, we've talked about. Another one that is really at the top of the list is the lack of mid-level managers that are ready for the position. I know Kayla within SGR has done some research on the Great Resignation, and she's right. So many people have left. They've got promoted before they were seasoned. They're not ready. And not only am I seeing that in government and hearing that from government, am I consulting with national firms and international firms? Same issue. Mid-level management is making decisions that are causing issues for service and also causing litigation issues. So I think we need to take a dive into that with AFI and talk about what training is needed, because that Great Resignation and some other things that have happened demographically. that is a problem that they're all facing. It's kind of the quiet secret that a lot of people don't talk about until you get the lawsuit. And so how can you prepare those mid-level managers? I'll come back to them in a moment. And then the other one is, it's not a majority of people talking about it, but I think it shows some foresight on their part, is the government efficiency, DOGE. What does that mean for local government? There's a lot of articles being written on it, and I know as a former practitioner in government, if I saw a Democrat coming into the White House, I started thinking, hey, as a big city operator, which I was, I'm going to be able to get grants directly given to me. So I would set up our grant department for that. If I saw a Republican coming in, I would say, hey, those grants are going to go through the state. Who do we know at the state? How can we start getting involved? That's what you do, and people know that. So, but with the Trump administration, with DOGE coming out, no one knows what's going to happen. And many of the leaders I've spoken to, if I say, hey, because of maybe debt reduction or some other initiative of efficiency, what happens if they start limiting your grant funding? Do you know how much money and what percentage is in your budget? And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't. And I would recommend everyone start looking at your budget, see how much you're getting from the federal government, and then figure out, if I lose some of this money, how do we handle those services? How do we continue to be effective yet efficient? A lot of unknowns there. We want to be on the forefront. But let me get back to mid-level managers. We've talked about two big issues, and there's a whole lot of other issues we'll have to talk about in AFI. But people don't see that AI implementation and lack of mid-level managers actually goes hand in hand.
Mhm.
If you are trying to move your department forward or your city forward with artificial intelligence, how do you do that if your mid-level managers that make the most critical decisions day in and day out, if they're not ready for that, if they're not the leaders they need to be, or if they're not trained? I give the analogy of I love cars. I love driving cars. I've taken every class you can take in government, especially police, on pursuit and all this. I was in Indianapolis, the home of the Indianapolis 500, and been on the track. And I will tell you that while I have good driving capabilities and I've driven all these cars, you put me in one of those cars and I'll wreck. And I know that because I did the simulator and I ran the car right into turn one as I was taking off. So I didn't have the capability. And I think sometimes we want to implement AI, but our workforce isn't ready for it because we haven't invested time. Those are the issues we need to be talking about in AFI and looking for solutions among our members.
That's really fascinating and really resonates with me. And one of the things we do at SGR is help cities create their own emerging leaders program that includes a mentoring component with their higher level leaders. And I could go down that rabbit hole fast, but I'm going to resist it. Although I think that's really important, because I want you to talk some about Civic Marketplace. That's the new business that Ron Hollifield, our CEO and owner, has created. And there's a connection between Civic Marketplace and AFI. And help us see what that connection is a little bit.
Well, I think when you talk about AFI, the innovation part, the future part of it as well, and trying to do best practices, I think it fits all of those mantras. And now I'm going to mention a word, and when I say this, everybody's eye is going to glaze over because this is what happens. But when you mention the word procurement, people's eyes glaze over. And I get it, because mine used to as well, until I realized how much money I was spending on trying to procure things and how much money things were costing me. And then realizing, as local study says, every time you go out and try to procure something, it costs anywhere from $1,000 to tens of thousands of dollars. And that's been my experience as well. I think what Civic Marketplace does is it makes it very easy. So if you're a small city and you don't have a procurement department and somebody does it once in a while, they can help you with white glove service. If you're a large city, you've probably lost control of how it all works. They can help you with it as well. What Civic Marketplace allows you to do is, if you're an AFI member, you can join our co-op and be a part of Civic Marketplace. It lets you go out and use other people's bids. So if there's already a bid that's out there for some type of camera system that you need for your city, and it's a one you want, there's already a bid, you can piggyback on that and not only reduce the amount of time it takes for you to get that product. You may get it in 60 days less than you thought you'd get it, but it also reduces cost and time because you're not spending the money on the procurement and you're not spending the time on it as well. So it meets the two mantras that I always talk about, being effective and being efficient. The other thing I like about it is that because of its attachment between AFI and Civic Marketplace, you can work with their professionals and ours to work on your procurement and make sure you're getting the best prices and do bake-offs and all these things you can do in Civic Marketplace. But here's another advantage that I don't think we spend enough time talking about, is that you also have a community of other governments that have used these technologies most of the time before. So they can tell you the pitfalls, what to look for, what to watch out for. And I'll tell you where this became so important to me to share is that when I was in one large city, I inherited a procurement process that had people had sat down, put the procurement process together. We went out and got a vendor, hired the vendor, gave them $8 million to get started. And when I got involved, I realized the people doing the procurement, while they had knowledge, they only do this once a career. The people on the other side of the table do this every week. So it was really weighed in their favor that what the city actually bought that they thought was a product, they didn't look at the fine print, and it was being developed. It wasn't an actual product. It ended up in litigation. I was able to get money back from this company, but we lost about $3 million of taxpayer dollars because we didn't do our procurement right. Let the experts help you with it. They'll make it easy. It'll be streamlined. I know people referring to it as the Amazon for local government. And I tell you, I don't think that's overstating it. It can really change the flow and make your life a lot easier in the procurement world. So we'll be pushing that as we move forward because I think it meets those two mandates that I've always had, to be effective and to be efficient. I think it makes you significantly more effective and significantly more efficient.
Well, in case there is anyone whose eyes are still glazed over, although I hope that's not the case, but let's talk about something really, really fun, which is one of my favorite events of the whole year, and that's the TLG conference, which is coming up in April in Scottsdale from April 7th to 9th. And will you tell us a little bit about what we're going to learn about there?
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of different speakers on different topics. You're going to get the best of the best. I mean, this is all about innovation. I've heard people that have told me that their favorite conference out of all the conferences in government that they go to, their favorite conference is TLG because they get practical advice. I'm looking forward to it because this will be the first time I'm there as an executive director. I get to talk to people, get feedback, and really chart our course for the future. And I think that's important to say is that when we gather in these venues, I get to talk firsthand with individuals and I get to hear back from what some of the issues are. And then we're going to address those issues in AFI. I think that's my responsibility to our membership, is to address the issues that they're bringing to the forefront. And so while we'll be finding solutions and hearing what other people are doing, we're also going to have those conversations about some of the issues that we're facing. And I'm looking forward to it. And don't forget, what is at the end of this month, we have a servant leader conference coming up, and I'll be speaking there. So once again, I'll be sharing about AFI. I want to be AFI's biggest spokesperson because I think it benefits people. But we'll talk about servant leadership, my portion, in talking about how it doesn't, you have servant leadership sometimes at the top, but does it really permeate your organization to have that lasting effect that you're trying to make it have? So I'll be talking about that on Thursday.
I'm sorry, Mike. I was just going to add that for those who are still interested and haven't registered yet, we are sold out of in-person registrations, but we still have virtual registrations available. The virtual registration, you get to see the sessions, you get to interact via the app or the chat. So you have access to all the handouts. So it's still a great opportunity to participate and learn. So I would just encourage those of you who aren't registered yet to sign up to attend virtually with us.
Yeah, I love those. They're great. And then that's the Servant Leadership Conference, but we still have space available at TLG, and we got a feeling it's going to sell out too. So if you're thinking about joining us, please do so quickly.
Yeah, Lisa put the links for both of those registrations in the chat box. And I would just echo that both of those conferences are going to be great. Looking forward to hearing you speak at the Servant Leadership Conference. We talked a little bit about, as you're trying to summarize what AFI is about, and House and Lay, I think, really said this well, that what it comes down to is we will help you get started with innovation. We'll help you gather together with others who are being innovative. We might add a third to that will help you get better at innovation. But those two things really are the heart of it: getting started, getting better, and then getting together. So if you were talking to a city manager or a local government employee that really just wants to get their organization going a little bit more in innovation, what would you tell them, Troy?
Well, the same thing I tell anyone: listen first, see what the issues are, what are their bottlenecks, listen, and then try to talk to people about solutions. I've done everything forming efficiency teams and technology teams to talk through these issues. But the beauty is you can do that internally, but you can also reach out to AFI, and we can look for cities that have done something similar and get you with a peer city to talk to, so we can learn from each other. We want to bring that together. But I'll give some leadership advice, if I could, Mike, to these individuals that are dealing with this. You're trying something new. You're trying something innovative. There are going to be people that are going to be against it. I mean, it is just a given. I have never had a major success in my career that when I started, somebody didn't tell me it was the worst idea ever, that it was going to fail. But I knew it was a problem and needed to be addressed, so we just dug in anyway. What I will tell you: stand firm, but you got to listen. You got to make sure you're meeting the needs of your workforce, more importantly, the needs of the community. Stand firm. And for those who are critics, here's what I would say about them. Even if they're being malicious in their criticism, listen to what they're saying. What I have found is sometimes my critics have a little shred of truth somewhere in there that they're hanging their whole argument on. Take that truth away from them. Learn from your critics, get better, move it forward, stand firm, continue to communicate, be the biggest cheerleader for it, communicate often, and those critics will drop away. And if you do make a mistake or something happens, the public is very forgiving of people that something goes wrong, but they're trying to move it forward, because you're going to say, hey, we had a little bit of a setback here, but here's where we're going and here's how we're going to fix it. You're going to be fine. But I'm so committed to this that I realize that it's a 24/7 job for people in government. It just is. I've been on call most of my career, 24/7, even when I was working in the private sector. So if I'm going to be a good leader, a good servant leader, I've got to be available to you. So I get criticized for doing this, and I've been doing this for 20 years in my work life and with media and with leaders. But I want everyone on this line to have my number. So if you ever run into something and you need advice, give me a call. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, give me a couple minutes, but I will answer and I will talk to you if it's an emergency. But I mean that. I want you to call me. Because if you're going through it, someone else is probably going through it, or someone else is being. I want to help you early. But my direct number is 361-445-9496. 361-445-9496. If I don't answer, leave a message, send me a text. I promise you I will get back to you promptly. That's my responsibility as being the executive director as AFI, because I know you have a tremendous difficult job in all forms of government. So I want to make myself available.
Thank you for that, Troy. And if you didn't get that down, we'll put it in the email that goes out following this webinar so that you can have it, because I know Troy is sincere about that. And Troy, I just want to thank you so much again for your time. This has been great. We are so elated that you have taken on this new position. I think everyone is going to enjoy working with you and will benefit from it. I want to just say a quick word about next week's webinar. I'm so excited about that one too, because a good friend of ours here at SGR, Hope Boyd, is going to be with us. Hope worked at SGR when I first came here, and of course Krista, you knew her there as well, but now she is the Director of Communications for the city of Cleburne, Texas. And she is an award-winning Director of Communications and an awesome individual. And she's going to be talking about storytelling in local government and how to tell your story in an effective way. I really encourage you to sign up for that webinar because I think it will be dynamite listening to Hope. So thank you again, Troy, Krista, Lisa Shook, who is always working behind the scenes. We really appreciate it. And all of you that have joined us for this one, we are glad to be of service to you. And we will see you down the road.